Woman, my hour has not come. In other words, Mom, I'm not ready. But Mary knew different. She isn't saying, do something about the wine situation. She is saying, it's time. It's time for you to show them who you are. And so Jesus performs his first sign of changing water into wine. Anyone who would see the wine would say to themselves, who is this guy? Is he Dionysus, the god of wine? Look at the abundance. No, he is greater than Dionysus. It's not just that Jesus changes water into wine. It's not just that the amount of wine he makes would fill a cellar. It's that the wine is so good. It's so good, there's no longer any room for the cheap stuff. The wine steward got some wine, but he didn't know who had made this wine. He assumed it was the bridegroom. So he goes to the bridegroom and says, you know, we don't do it this way. We never do it this way. The way we do it is we serve the good stuff first, and that way everyone will look and see that you are generous and extravagant. And then you wait till everyone gets drunk and you bring out the cheap stuff, and they won't notice. But with you, it's the good stuff all the time. And so the disciples know who made the wine. And it's with this first sign in the wedding at Cana that his glory was revealed, and they believed in him. Jesus needed a nudge. He needed a nudge from Mom, from someone who knew who he was. And it is with this nudge that Jesus commences this long path toward glory and toward suffering. There was another man who needed a nudge, and his name was Martin Luther King Jr. We often associate Dr. King with his I Have a Dream speech. That speech that he gave on the march to Washington in August of 1963 during a campaign for freedom and for jobs. This was for freedom and jobs that had been restricted from Black people under the practice of segregation and other racist practices in the United States. Recently, I rewatched this speech, and something surprised me about it. When King begins his speech, he's looking down at his pages. He was wedded to his pages. I was really surprised. This is not the Dr. King I had in my head. The man who would speak with confidence, facing everyone, not using his notes. So I thought, that's strange. And if you listen closely in watching this speech, you will hear a woman's voice on the side. And she's encouraging him, saying, yes, yes. You never see her on camera. All you see are men on camera. As I listened to the speech, he talks about the cruelty of oppression, of racism, and the grim assessment he had on the soul of the nation. The speech gets heavy. very heavy, to the point where your heart begins to break. And it was during this heavy part that King takes the longest pause he does in the speech. And in this pause, it's like he wakes up and he no longer looks down on his pages, and he looks up and confidence fills his body. And then he says, "Let us not wallow in the valley of despair." And then he launches into the "I have a dream" portion of his speech, not looking down at his pages any longer. Mahalia Jackson was up at the podium with King to the side. She was the gospel performer who came on before King came up to do his speech. She had worked with Dr. King, and she was a great supporter. This is the woman's voice in the background. The story goes that at the point where it gets very heavy, where your heart begins just to break, and you don't know how it's going to get better, the story goes that Mahalia calls out to Martin Luther King and says, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." And that was when things changed. This portion that is so famous was an original part of the speech. It was improvised. And we know the rest of the story. We hear these words. "I say to you today, my friends, that in spite of the difficulties and frustrations of the moment, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at table in brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a desert state sweltering with the heat of injustice and oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character." A nudge. A nudge from someone who knew who they were. Jesus' mom knew who he was and nudged him. Mahalia Jackson knew the dream and nudged Martin Luther King. And then the path opens, and they walk on a path of glory and of suffering. It was actually a cue from this speech, the "I Have a Dream" speech, that way back in 2018, when we at St. Thomas launched the Dream Project. It might be a faint memory for some of you who were here when we did this project, and some of you have joined us since then. So, a little refresher. The vestry at that time was dealing with a large budget shortfall. Our concern wasn't just about that one year, but about what we can see as a trend with fewer and fewer pledges each year. Even with newcomers coming, the trend had a steady momentum downward. We learned that many mainline churches were facing the same problem. We also learned that churches had attempted quick fixes. Fixes like programmatic changes and advertising, but to no avail. Something bigger was going on than a programmatic change could fix. We, the vestry, decided we needed a strategy for financial sustainability that was beyond pledge income. We punched numbers, we put graphs together, we described the problem. But all that data can get heavy, can get discouraging. And a wise person among us said, we need the dream. We need the dream. Not just a dream to close the gaps in budgets, but a dream about who we are becoming as a parish. What are we becoming in this larger movement of how churches are changing? So we began the Dream Project, and the whole congregation was invited to participate. If you recall, we rearranged our liturgy. We were meeting in the hall at times, we broke out in small groups, we combined services, all to collect dreams and to discuss our desire and dream for the future. And by Pentecost of 2019, after months of discernment, the vestry got together in a special retreat and made our new mission statement based on all the dreaming that we did together. And this is our mission statement. St. Thomas is joyfully on the way. We are becoming whom Jesus calls us to be, a spiritually centered community dedicated to creating connections with God, each other, and our neighbors, so that we might walk together with love toward justice, compassion, and hope. So now we found our drumbeat by which we all participate in rowing the boat together. We wanted to find sustenance for our community, to ways of gathering resources to build the community so that this community is strengthened for the work of justice, to practice compassion, to announce hope. And we formed the Financial Sustainability Committee to find these resources that are outside of pledge income. This committee has worked with unwavering dedication, even through the slog of the pandemic, to study, to investigate, to pray, and to love this church, and find out how we can thrive and continue to be a beacon of light in our community. In 2021, this community made its recommendation to the vestry, and the vestry has been studying it for months. At the annual meeting coming up on January 30th, the vestry will communicate with the parish and ask the parish to participate in considering the recommendations. Everyone will be invited to understand what's going on, to give their feedback. We want to hear from everyone who wishes to speak. The dream has led us here in the next phase of engagement. I confess to you, there are days I don't feel ready for this. It's a lot of work. And I think to myself, haven't we been through enough? with this pandemic? Haven't we each been through enough in our own personal sufferings on top of this pandemic? Don't we carry a weight of grief that seems enough for now? And yet, I feel the nudge. I'm now in my 7th year at St. Thomas. I cannot believe it. I've buried a good number of our pillars of the church. I've buried a lot of people here. And my heart still grieves for those we have lost. I have baptized and blessed babies. I have been able to get to know our newcomers. We have walked through the thresholds of all this stuff in our pandemic, and we will cross more thresholds together. I have played with you, I have cried with you, and I have been in a lot of meetings with you. And you have held me through the most painful part of my life, and have felt your support of me. I think I might have been able to survive all this without being here, but this is the thing I learned about being here with you, my beloveds at St. Thomas. This is what I have found. The only cure for a broken heart is to love more. In short, I love you. I feel your love for me. And this is the nudge. This is the nudge for what is next. I love this church. I love St. Thomas. I know that you love this church. I hope you have felt loved here. I know that if you stay here, you will find love here. And the dream is that we keep growing together as a community so that we can proclaim God's love to all who want to hear it, need to hear it, can't hear it enough. There is much work ahead of us to realize the dream. And whenever the work gets a bit too heavy, when the data feels unmanageable, and we don't know how to make things happen, let us remember the dream for our community. Let us all come to annual meeting on January 30th and listen to the presentation on financial sustainability. And let us continue to participate throughout the rest of the year in listening deeply about what we can become. And when our hearts grow faint and our courage wanes, let us remember love. Love is our nudge. Let it nudge us toward the future so that we might be a powerful community that announces love and proclaims love to all who need to hear it. Amen.